So the actors are in a very pure process. Some of them have likened it to, black box theater, no set, no lighting, no nothing, just the other people. And so their emotional axis in the scene is not distracted by anything. It's just that other actor. They have that with each other. That's all they need. That's all actors need, is an emotional reality to play within. And they love that too, because we're not stopping to lay the dolly track or to get the sun to the right position or get all the extras into place or, get all the hardware back to one and get ready to go again. We just roll. Okay, all right, let's do it again. Let's go back to one. Let's do it again. And we just get into a session. Sometimes we'll record for 10, 12 minutes straight, maybe 5, 10 takes, different ideas. Hey, why don't you do this? I'll throw them a line on the fly. It's a very creative sandbox, and the actors really love it. Either that or they're very good actors and lying about it for years on end. It's all little details that add up to a fantasy character. We just want you to believe they really exist. Well, and of course we don't. You go into a movie theater, you're being transported to a fictional fantasy world. But the more you can suspend your disbelief, the more fun it is. I think people want to suspend their disbelief. They don't want to sit there and pick away at it. They just spent whatever it is, 16, 17, 18 bucks to go have an experience. They're leaning in, So there's a kind of almost a contract between the movie and the audience. We're all just going to join hands and skip off to Pandora together, and it's going to be fun. And it's not like we're starting from scratch. I mean, we were doing water simulations back on Titanic, but it's taking it not just to the next level, but up 5 levels. If we started 5 or 6 years ago with our study of water and our quantification of it and how we create these simulations, we had to future-proof ourselves for 5, 6, 7 years down the line, to be ahead of the curve right now, today, as we're finishing the film. So I'd say water was the biggest problem, and that's something we knew going in. That was going to be our challenge. But the beauty of it is, if you can solve water for this movie, which we've done, which Weta has done, and we worked with them to do it, you never have to look back. You never have to worry about it again. You can do all water anytime until the end of time, right? So these tools become incredibly important to the effects industry at large. It was such a change from working on Titanic, where she was quite experienced at the time but she had never been on a film of that scale. So it was all a bit bigger than her, a bit overwhelming for her. She did a masterful job, obviously, but on this film, she'd been around the block and done enough movies, and she came in and she spent 2 or 3 days watching how it was all done, and then basically started producing the scenes. But it was fun. I welcomed that, and it was we found it both to be not only a great working relationship and the creation of a very strong, memorable character, and she enjoyed all that, but almost like the freedom to be in a different body, to have a tail, and to have a way of walking and moving. And Kate has she's got quite a presence in the film. She's not really like anybody else in the movie. Maybe Neytiri is the closest, because they're both very strong kind of alpha characters, and of course they clash for that reason. And that was fun. Watching them meet and clash is one of my favorite parts of the film. The key to it was to shoot really underwater, and really at the surface of the water, so people were swimming properly, and they were taking their own weight to get out of the water properly, or diving in properly, and it just looks like that. It looks real, because the motion was real, and the emotion was real, because these kids are having to learn how to be underwater. They don't know how to be underwater. They were raised in the forest, and so their fear factor probably helped. Although everybody was very, very well trained, and we used a very safe and systematic way to allow them to dive. They were all scuba trained, but we didn't use scuba. We just did that so that they got used to being underwater for long periods of time. And we went to Hawaii and we got everybody on scuba, but we were also doing free diving training at the same time. I don't think the audience gives you brownie points for making what they think of as photography look like photography. It doesn't work that way. You don't get extra. You only get dinged if you don't do it. But you don't get any bonus. It doesn't make it a better movie in their minds. What makes it a better movie is the people, the characters, the creatures, the things they're seeing, the things they're experiencing. But if they can let go of their disbelief, like, did these guys go to this other planet and shoot it, in that handheld documentary style? I feel like I'm really there. It's all working at a subliminal level. It's taking away the disbelief. And if they believe in it and they invest in it, now it's up to the story and the characters to work on the audience's heart and mind.
I can't imagine any other filmmaker being able to create this from top to bottom with so much detail and bring you so into that world, to create so many stories at once, which is one of the things I admire about Jim the storyteller, doing this sort of, coming of age movie that was also a great love story that was also, and perhaps most importantly, the story of these two worlds colliding. I remember having lunch with Jim, and he started to talk about this kind of forest girl who could communicate with the animals and with the plants, who had a special gift of connection with living things, and who had perhaps eventually a strong connection with Ewa. And I loved the idea of this character. And then he said, well, and she's going to be about 14. And I said, oh. And he said, and you and I know how immature you are, so I think you can handle this. I have had to work completely differently than I ever have before, because you do have to strip away all of that, Sigourney Weaver, whoever that is. And it's been kind of an amazing experience to go back in time and be with that person every day. And it's been quite an incredible year. I remember when Jim said, oh yeah, you're going to have to hold your breath for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I said, Jim, I can't hold my breath for 30 seconds. And he said, you'll be able to. And I thought, oh, this is just Jim. And yet at the first lesson that Kirk gave us, I held my breath for 1.5 minutes. And I thought, wow, what is this? And it just shows you how little we know about our systems and what they can do. Zoe and I had a lot of fun because, she would say, you really need to, as the Na'vi woman, you need to, conduct yourself like this. And, she'd say to my brothers, take care of Kiri. And I'd be like, what? No one has to take care of me, and I'd be like, just like you would be. And I'd stomp around instead of being a graceful Na'vi. And, it's all just kind of, we're actors, so it just all kind of tumbles out. You're not planning any of this stuff. But we had some good laughs about that. And of course, Zoe and Sam have such little children, and they're used to sweet children, Suddenly they have these teenagers who are so moody and unpredictable.
I think when Jim writes a script, he writes it without the boundaries of what is possible. He writes it to tell the best narrative story. And then when you pick up and read Titanic, Avatar, or The Way of Water, you go, how are we possibly going to do this? The challenge at first is so daunting that you don't know. But that's what excites me about the process. And that's what excites the crew that we were able to pull together. One of the things that was most rewarding to me coming out of the first Avatar was no matter where I was in the world, people identified themselves with the Na'vi. Whether I was in the Middle East, whether I was in South America, people would come up and say, the Na'vi, they are me. I see myself in that. And I believe in the sequels, people will see the same thing. On Pandora, in the first movie, we introduced audiences to a number of different creatures. As we move into the sequels, we're doing the same thing. There's one creature in particular called the Tulkun that is more than just a creature. It's actually an intellectual species. And the reason I say that is because it too can connect with Eywa and download its memories. And it shares its experiences with the Na'vi. The Tulkun are 300-foot-long behemoths, peaceful behemoths of the oceans. They have a language that they speak that is unique. They have mathematics, they have music, they have song, all of these things. They have philosophy within their culture. And they have a very strong bond with the reef people. And the Metkayina each have a sister or brother that is their bond with the Tulkun. And that happens very early in life. And Renal, played by Kate Winslet, she has a Tulkun that she's bonded with. And it's a lifelong bond, and it's a kindred spirit that they share with each other. And they celebrate each other's families, the birth of a new child. They mourn the loss of a family member. And we see that in the sequels. When that character was created, the idea of Sigourney playing the younger version was the perfect fit. And performance capture, I have always said, gives actors the opportunity to play characters that they could not otherwise play. And Kiri's character and Sigourney's performance are the perfect example of that. When you see Kiri up on the screen, she is a 14-year-old young Na'vi girl in search of herself. And it's the performance given by one of the great actresses of our time. But she's playing that girl. And Sigourney went back and studied what she was like when she was younger. We looked at footage that Sigourney gave us in helping to design Kiri and still images, because for us, in a character that we create, it only works to have the performance come through if you're holding on to some of the facial aspects of the actor itself. And Kiri did this, and Sigourney embraced this idea. And to see her playing a 14-year-old kid when she was performing it, it was magic. It's what acting is all about. What I am hoping audiences will experience when they finally get to see Way of Water in the theaters is something that makes them forget everything else that is going on in the world. That they are transported to another world, a world that they want to spend time in, but a world that they want to spend time with the characters in this story and learn from their journey how they in their own lives can overcome the challenges they face by the examples that our characters give them.
I think Jake and Neytiri is the ultimate love story. I think it showed you in the first movie. It didn't matter whether you were, what race you were, what planet you were, what color you were from. Love is love, and I think it forges. The first film and the battle that they undertook forged an unbreakable bond between them. It gets tested, just like any marriage. It gets tried like any kind of relationship under duress. But I think that Neytiri is Jake's world. That's the world that he found. Jake's a bit more of a warrior this time, so I wanted to give him a bit more of an animalistic feel. He's not necessarily as human as he was 10 years ago. He has adapted. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of put that feral nature into Jake, to distance himself from being the guy in the wheelchair from the first film. Zoe and me were always just very close. I think we both didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into, and that gave us absolute freedom in the first movie to just bounce off each other and enjoy the ride. I think that she's now have several children. I've had several children. We've seen some side of the industry that we like and don't like. And then when we get back into this world, it's like putting on a great new, an old pair of gloves. It's easy. I know that what Jim is trying to create is very truthful, very emotional and grounded tales of the tribulations of a family and what it means to be in a family, and putting them in the most dire of situations, in a humongous intergalactic war, filled with exploitation and themes that are almost operatic. And at the heart of it, though, is, as I said, a family unit, a family trying to survive, a family trying to get through the teenage years, a marriage trying to hold itself together. That was without a doubt the most difficult thing I've ever done. I've been in this industry 20 years, and that's the hardest I've ever had to work. It's scary, it's intense, the time triples by 3 when you're dealing with water on any movie, but more so on this. And you're actually then having to make it look easy and seamless because the Na'vi and the Metkina learn to breathe underwater.
I would have been such a fool to have said no. And actually, Jim and I, we have sort of talked over the years about trying to come up with something to do together, find an opportunity to work together again. And I obviously, really loved the first film. I was one of those people who, it really got me. I really understood all the subtle and not so subtle themes that ran through it. And I found it very powerful and extremely emotional. And so I was just thrilled when he said, look, we've got to get you big and blue. And so the underwater performance capture, first of all, it's a huge amount to think about. So there's not just the physical challenge of holding your breath. There's then the added challenge of acting out a scene underwater where everything is very different. You're having to imagine coral reefs, you're having to picture, other Na'vi, Metkayina swimming around you, and often acting with a child who is in actual fact a safety diver who's 35 years old and not a 9-year-old girl. So there's that sort of added element too. Then you have the challenge of your movements are very, very different underwater. So rather than sort of sculling all the time or desperately trying to kick your legs to sort of stay in one place, finding that serenity and that calm, that's another thing. So there's all of that to take care of first. Then you have a wetsuit with motion capture bubbles all over you. Then you have a helmet and an arm with a GoPro sat in the front of it. What I love, though, about Jim deciding to put the actors in the water is that Jim does have, and I don't know any other person in my life like this, Jim does seem to have a sort of an inherent belief that humans can be capable of almost superhuman things sometimes, as he is. I mean, we've all seen it. But he also believes that everyone can push themselves just that little bit further than they ever believed that they were prepared to. And I love seeing him encourage people to go that extra mile and try that new experience that they were afraid of or daunted by. And luckily for me, I wasn't daunted by any of it. But if it weren't for Jim saying, you know, you could do all this water stuff if you want to. I mean, we could always get the stunt people to do it. I'm like, do you know me? Of course I'm going in the water. So it really has been it's just been fantastic, sort of mind-blowing, really. It is remarkable how much is being picked up in terms of your physical movements, and how, I mean, we walk in a particular way. You know, the Na'vi don't walk just like a regular human being. There's a sort of a composure to it, and a real strength and a groundedness. They walk in a very fluid way with their legs. They almost lead with their hips. Their shoulders are very upright. It's different, you know, not kind of like a slouchy human who probably doesn't think about how they're holding themselves when they walk down the street. And the tiniest adjustments to that Na'vi gait, it's really, you see it immediately, the difference from one take to the next. I'd watch and I'd go, oh God, I forgot to do my walk. And then you correct it and it makes the most enormous difference to the character. So learning to appreciate the subtleties of movement has been really great, actually. Yeah, really interesting.
As an actor, the worst thing you can be is self-aware and concerned about how you look and, you know, whether you're any good or anything like that. But this takes it to another whole level, because you haven't got any makeup, you've got no hair, you've got no pretty costumes or cool like props that you can, or sets, or, you know, it's like it's grey. You're in the grey mass, and so it all comes down to your imagination and your commitment to fulfill what's on a page in your own mind, and you just have to play. And it's one of the purest forms of play that I've ever done in my career. I've never done anything that is so I don't know, that's so bare. You're really naked up there. And so you're only armed with this childlike purity to play and to imagine. Theatre's close to it. It's as close to theatre as I've ever been in front of a camera. There's nothing like it, really. And then when you look over on the screen and they've already got like a low resolution of what you're doing, and it's like, it is really mind-blowing. You just look at it, it's like magic. It's like, how are they doing that? You got the space station, like they're all the guys at the control center, and you're like going, how am I waving my arms around like this and my avatar's right there on the screen? It's just incredibly magical process. So we have Tonowari, who's the Olokatan. Our tsahik of our tribe is Ronal, played by Kate Winslet. Then we have Aonung, our oldest son, and our daughter, who is Tserea. Now, we hold an important position in our village, in our reef village, and we have a lot of expectations upon us that we put upon ourselves and on our children around traditional conduct, about what is right and what is wrong, about our traditions and how we are to do things. We have a very classical approach to how we behave for not only our family, but for our reef family and our community, and for other reef and all of our cousins and brothers and sisters of the ocean. So it's a very highly organized society. Kate Winslet is a legend, not because of her past work alone, but the way she just rocked in here, just picked up her character. She had to sing a song, I think. She had to prep everything. She had to be in the haka. She had to sing the song in Na'vi. She had to do breathe-ups, learn how to breathe up. She has these huge underwater sequences, which I don't have. I don't have any of those particular challenges. And she had to do it on this tight schedule, and she did it all, and she made it look easy. I know it wasn't easy, I know how hard she works, but she's a legend. She's amazing. She's she's a real force. Yeah, like Jim does really treat us like his film family. You know, he does have his own family at home, and I don't know where he has time to do that, but he really does openly sort of say, no, I want to build a family. I want to come. He's not coming to work every day. He's coming to spend time with his film family. And he really does treat us, you know, within the scope of doing a production. You know, you really do feel a genuine connection there for the guy. And I think he needs that to get this done as well. Like, we'll go to where he needs us to go to get this done. It's a mammoth undertaking. It's huge.